If you have your Bibles tonight, turn to Exodus chapter 17. I'm going to be reading in verse 8 through 13. And as we continue in our study of Moses and the discipleship that we can learn from that, I'd like to show y'all just exactly what will happen when you start to get on this quest of learning to become a disciple, and how that God will turn around and use you to disciple someone else. You know, your giftings are not for you just to keep by yourself. They're actually meant for others. And so we see here, if you'll look with me in Exodus chapter 17, Nancy, you're going to have to keep me on tongue tonight. I keep this newfangled YouTube thing will not allow me to go out like they did on Facebook. If you'll look in Exodus chapter 17, it says, "Now Amalek," we're in verse 8, "came and fought against Israel. And Moses said to Joshua, 'Choose us some men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand.' So Joshua did just as Moses said to him, and he fought with Amalek." Now I want to stop right there for just a minute, because there's something you need to understand. You know, don't ever read this book like it's a novel. There is a reason why that God impressed on men to put this stuff down on paper. Have you ever wondered why it says here, why did Moses choose Joshua? Any of you ever bothered to think about what did he see in him that would cause him to choose him? He didn't, it didn't say he went out and chose a man. It just says he says to Joshua, "Go and choose us some men to go out and fight." Not only does he pull, there's a reason why he chooses Joshua, and there's a reason why that he trusts Joshua's decision. He trusts the men that he is going to go find in order to do this battle. Well, when you begin to chart a course where you want to know Him, you want to know Jesus Christ more than just your Lord and Savior. You want to know Him as your life. You want to know Him as your hope. You want to know Him as your peace. You want to know Him in the power of His resurrection, in the fellowship of His suffering. It's going to cause you to start seeing things from a whole new perspective. You're going to be able to see people. Your spirit is going to speak to you that there is a man right there that is not just a man of God, but has got the desire to become God's man. We all should have that desire to not just become the man of God or God's man, but God's woman too. Not only is He looking for Elijahs out here in this world today, He is looking for women to fill that role too, just like we read in the women of the Bible.
Preach it, brother.
He saw something in Joshua, and it might have been something that Joshua didn't see in himself at the time, but he saw something, and he chose Joshua to stand up and go before and fight with the Amaleks. But here's something interesting as we just read. Moses knows that they're going. Now look, Moses has been walking with these folks for a long time now. Right there in amongst them. And now he's going to kind of send them out there on his own to try something out while he goes up on the mountain. It says here, if you remember, he says, "But I'm going to go up on the hill with the rod of God." Why do you think that the Lord wanted us to know that Moses was not going to go into battle with them? That He chooses Joshua to go in. He's not going to go in with him. Instead, he's going to go up on a hill. Do you have any idea why, based on what we've talked about for the last year better? Well, let me just help you understand something if you don't already know. Moses understood that the battle would not be fought down there on the battleground, but that they did need to show up on the battleground in order for Amalek, the Amalek nation, and other people to get out, the word to get out, that what they're seeing in an earthly fashion right now is what's going on in the heavenlies. Did that make a lick of sense? Are you following me here? Moses knew that the only way for the Israelites to win this battle was if he got up on the mountain and started to intercede for his children.
Amen.
What do I mean by interceding? He is praying on their behalf. If you hang with me, we'll get further along in the Old Testament where you'll actually find out at one point Joshua is coming up along the ground. He's walking up along this road. He's already had some losses and he's suffered some losses and he's had some wins. And he's feeling really puffed up, and he comes upon this angel of the Lord, and he has the audacity to say to him, "Are you for us or against us?" And that angel replies this, "I am neither. But as the commander of the army I have come," meaning that I am here for the sole purpose of representing him. But Moses understood that there was a direct importance in going up on that hill and fighting for the children down there as they actually were battling. You know, we spend a lot of time fighting on this earth and very little time fighting in the heavens. We spend a lot of time trying to do this on our own strength instead of allowing the Lord and His army. He is as I had a youth tell me back when we had a true cowboy church, it was all boys that came. That God is, this was his exact words, okay? That God is the freaking general of His army. And that army is bigger, badder, than bolder than any of us could ever imagine. And Moses tapped into this, and Moses wants Joshua to see it for himself here directly. But as we read on, we see here that when Moses held up his hands, that the Israelites prevailed. This is verse 11. But when he let down his hands, Amalek prevailed. Now what this means is that as long as Moses is up on the mountain, lifting the rod of God up in the air, and giving it this surrendered look, the Israelites are winning. The general has shown up and he's kicking some honey in the heavens. And we're seeing on the earth because those people are falling. But if you've ever done this for a period of time, eventually the blood starts to go down your arms and you get this tingling motion, you get really tired, and you want to drop down. And when he would drop down, guess what would happen? The enemy could come in, he would take that moment, he'd take advantage of it, and the Israelites would start to lose. So here's what happens. We see here, as we read on further, that Aaron and Hur sees what's happening. They took a stone seat up there for Moses to sit on, and each one of them held a hand up. You got one on this arm, you got one on this arm. All they needed now was for Moses just to be there, and the two of them stand on both sides of him and help him fight this battle. You cannot do this on your own. If you try to fight on your own, you're going to end up getting worn out. And then when you get wore out, you're very vulnerable. And that's when the enemy starts to look for vulnerability and capitalize on it. You can't afford for that to happen. So here's what you need to see here. Every one of us needs to be a Moses. And we need to invite Aaron and Hur to be a part of our team. And every one of us needs to be an Aaron and a Hur to someone else. There is no couch sinners. You just cannot. You got to get out of that stinking thinking that all you're to do is just to sit on that damn pew, that pew there and do nothing. I'm so sorry I said that. I'm sorry. I have gone a long time without saying anything like that. But you understand what I'm telling you, don't you? We have got to get into this mentality where we're not going to go at it alone. We're not going to accept going out on it alone. And we're going to look for folks to come in. When you start to become a disciple, you can't help but want to disciple others. When you begin to become a disciple, you can't help but want to join others, especially those who are fighting a battle, and get in there with them. And I can tell you right now, I am so sorry that I said that a while ago. I'm really sorry. But I'm telling you right now, when you bite into this thing, it is absolutely amazing. Jesus understood this. Of course he would, because he's actually part of the triune that put it on paper. When we read in the New Testament, it says that he sent the 70 out by twos. Because he absolutely knew that when you added more cords into the deal, you would become stronger. I've heard some say that it's in twos, but I think you need to do threes. He says, let us make man in our own image. And we're all made of a trichotomy of body, soul, and spirit. Moses didn't do it in twos, he did it in threes. Moses, Aaron, and Hur. But that's just my personal opinion. Okay? But here we see that Moses needed help. First, Moses was willing to be a participant in the area that he knew would be required to win the battle. Joshua was willing to be the participant in leading the men in to see that God would deliver them as long as they put Him first. As long as the emphasis was on Him, they would win. They needed to see that. How many times in your life have you needed God to just show up in your life in circumstances so that you could see for yourself that what He's been trying to tell you is for real? It ain't enough that we just listen and just take it at face value. No, we've got to see it. When Jesus sent the 70 out by twos, they came back and said, guess what? You won't believe what we did in your name. But we found out that when we invoked the name of Jesus, we could cast demons out, we could see the healed get up and walk, or in the blind see. Can you believe that, Lord? And don't you know He was going back, But what's most important is now that you see it. Because when you see it and you buy into it, how many of you whether it's Amway, Avon, whatever, I had somebody try to sell me some Amway products one time, tried to get me involved in Amway. And I'm looking all around the house and I see the Amway products, and he brings this soap out to me, and he says, but I don't like the soap, so I don't use it. So I dump the soap out and I pour dog dishwashing detergent in it. But I want you to think that I like Amway. Do you think I was going to buy into that? Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I know, I had the same look. It didn't make a lick of sense to me. But here, Moses wanted Joshua to see something. God wanted Moses to show something to Joshua so that Joshua would be ready. When it came time for Moses to step back and give the reins over to Joshua, he needed to be ready to run, not still learning. He needed to be ready. Well, Paul tells us in 2 Timothy chapter 2, he tries to tell Timothy to invest your time. Well, just look with me. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. And the things that you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit these things to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Notice here, Paul does not say, commit these to men. He says, commit these to faithful men. Do you know why he would go the extra mile to say that? Because I want to tell you that God didn't just speak just to do out of chatter. Everything he said through the ears of these men to record down in this book was for a purpose. He says to find faithful men, just like Moses did. He found a faithful man. He found him in Joshua. He says to go find faithful men. Now women, this goes to go find faithful women. You need to go and look and find faithful women, and we need to go find faithful men to pour into, because you ain't going to get an Aaron and a Hur to just jump up out of the bushes. You may actually have to spend time getting them in to where they're willing to come beside you, just like you do with the explorers. You find the best ones, the cream of the crops, in hopes that they'll go from being explorers to being reserves to being full time. And by the time they're ready to go in the car, you ain't got to do nothing. Well, that ain't proper English, but you don't have to do anything but just go through the motion of the FTO program, show them a little fine-tuning stuff, and bam, they're ready to go. That's what we're after. That's what he's trying to say. Go find faithful men and women that you can commit these things to, so that you're raising everybody is in one accord. We sung a song tonight about how everybody was in one accord. Now, whether you want to talk about a car, you want to talk about it's a vehicle that when everybody comes together, by golly, they're warring, they're fighting, the enemy is he's shaking in his boots. Wouldn't that be cool to be a strong warrior for God against the enemy? Well, I wonder what happens if you try to commit these things to people who are not faithful. Can I tell you how aggravating it is when people will come up to you and they're so mesmerized? If I could just, there was a lot of folks that, well, let me just tell you, in my courting days, there were women that were really enthralled in the cowboy motif attire, But when winter come, they didn't like horses. That's, you tell who to have, the posers from the realtors when winter hits every time. It busting ice, I don't want to do this anymore. You'll find out real quick who are the posers and who aren't. And you know how aggravating it is when you pour your life into them to train them, to teach them how to be a Ben or a Hur, or I keep thinking about Ben or Hur, but an Aaron or a Hur. And they look at you and they buy into it, but then their life shows no sign that they're putting any of that to practice. And can I tell you, for someone like me, that's aggravating. Because then you just feel like you're just being used. I only want you for what I get out of it. What do you think it would have been like? Moses has poured his life into Joshua. Moses has poured his life into Hur. Moses has poured his life into Aaron. What do you think would have happened? How might all of this change had Aaron and Hur tucked tail and ran the other way in the heat of the battle and left Moses there by himself? They would have died, y'all. The Amalek folks, this wasn't their first rodeo. They knew what to do. They were more seasoned than the Israelites. They would have been wiped out, wiped off, however you want to look at it. But because he found 3 people that were willing to be faithful with what they had learned, God was able to use them to perform something miraculous, mighty, that none of them ever even imagined possible. Does this not give you a desire to maybe want to rethink about where you are in this scenario? Because we can learn a lot from Moses. We can learn a lot from Joshua. I can't tell you how many times I've said to folks, I don't mind being a Joshua, but I don't want to be a Moses. But guess what? At some point, God's going to call you to be the Moses. Or the Mosette, if you're a woman. Well, whatever the woman name for Moses would be, okay? But you get my feeling. You're picking up what I'm putting down, right? Every one of us, God's calling every one of us to fill one of those roles at some point. And of course, Joshua, one day, is going to become Moses. He's going to be the leader. He spends time being a follower in order to be prepared to be a leader. That's discipleship right there. We spend time with the Father to be a student so that one day we can become a teacher. This is not about addition, but it's about multiplication. The way you multiply. You know, Jesus spent time with 12 and ended up changing the whole world. Because they all went out. And they went from being disciples to becoming apostles. The disciple is the big word for a student. Apostle is the big word for a teacher. And y'all, we can be disciplettes and apostolettes, or ladies of the apostles, or you know what? This whole thing is not sexist at all. But God's calling every one of us to do this. Which means we're going to have to step out of what we have called comfort and break into the uncomfortable so that we can see the unfathomable. And when you begin to see that and you start to look at life through God's perspective, hang on to your hat. Because this is a great ride. I'm telling you. Because it ain't been that long ago that I was over there. And now I'm over here. Helping the Moseses keep their arms up. While sometimes there are folks helping me keep my arms up. But this is all cyclical. We all do it together in one accord. Can you just imagine what would happen if every one of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of us, made the determination that we were going from this day forward to be a Joshua, in hopes that God would train us up to be a Moses. We're willing to be taught to be a Moses, or an Aaron, or a Hur. What do you think the numbers would look like in this church if we went from this religious cycle of I'm just me? Moses told God, I can't do this because I stutter. He starts throwing out all these reasons why he can't be used by God. What's your reason? God didn't see it. He didn't see the limitation that Moses put on himself. What he said was that if you will just surrender, if you'll just open your mouth, I will tell you what to say. I will give you the words to speak if you'll just open your mouth. If you will just surrender our greatest enemy is our inner me. Our inner me holds us back. And it's stinking time to leave your inner me on that cross so that He can fill your inner me and then pour right out of you into all of your surrounding. And watch out. I got 5 minutes left.
You have 4 minutes.
I got 4 minutes left. This is a great picture. Thank you very much. This is a great picture of intercessory prayer and a great picture of obedience. Because Moses prayed, the blessings fell on Joshua, who at that moment, the only thing he had on his mind was leading his men into battle and nobody dying. That was his emphasis. Well, here's what we need to be doing. If you are a believer, if you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, if you can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that I know Him as my Lord, I know Him as my life, then it's time for you to allow His life to live through you. It's just time. If you don't know Him, look, don't let the enemy talk you in as a believer to missing out on the glory of the Father, missing out on the power, missing out on the ability to learn from Him, missing out on the ability to intercede for Him, and to miss out on being used by Him. Don't let the enemy do that. That's what he does. He likes to go around and get. We ain't gonna do this in 3 minutes, okay? He likes to go around and cause confusion in your life. Get your mind off of Him. Get where you're majoring in the minor and you're minoring in the major. He loves to do that so that you can be ineffective. But if you don't know Him, the best day of my life was when I realized that I was a sinner in need of a Savior. When I learned that because of one man's sin, I was born into this world full of sin and eternally separated from my Heavenly Father. The sin of Adam caused me to, only natural thing to do is to do something that hurt God's feelings, and He could not turn, He could not stomach it, He could not be in the presence of it. Therefore, I was eternally separated from Him. And then, And then I read in Romans chapter 6, verse 23, that there is a debt that has to be paid, and that debt, it says that the wages of sin is death. So your penalty, your payment for one man's action is death. That's it. But God, in His infinite mercy and His wisdom and His grace, allows His Son, God in the flesh, to go before and say, Daddy, let me go down there and take care of this for you. They're not going to get it right no matter how much we tell them, you're doing it wrong, this is what you got to do. And He allows His Son to pay that debt for us. When we read that on the cross, He says, my God, why hast Thou forsaken me? For the first time in His life, He understood what it meant when He was to be separated from the Father, because the Father has turned His back on His Son. And at that moment, He allowed the weight of the sin to become on His shoulders so that He could actually die knowing what He was dying for. And every one of us could say, I can relate. You can't sit there and say, he has absolutely no idea of the hell that I've been through, because he does. For a brief moment, for 3 days,